The year is 1965. Most 16-year-old girls at that time would have been thinking of, well, anything other than what this 16-year-old girl was thinking of. Sylvia Likens was not thinking that she would be viciously abused. She was not thinking she would be sexually assaulted. And most of all, she was not thinking that she would eventually be murdered. Sylvia's parents worked for a traveling carnival, and since their marriage was rough and money was hard to come by, they needed work whenever they could get it. So when they got a job with the carnival that was in town, they decided to leave both Sylvia and her sister Jenny, who suffers from polio, with Gertrude Baniszewski while they traveled with the carnival. Since Sylvia and Jenny were enrolled in school and were both friends with Gertrude's daughter Paula, they thought it would work out fine. They would realize too late, however, just how wrong they were. On July 5th, Sylvia's father Lester agreed to pay Gertrude $10 a week per child in exchange for watching over his two daughters. The fact that Gertrude appeared to be living in a rundown house and that she had 7 kids of her own never seemed to bother Lester. During the first week, Gertrude began to show her growing hostility towards both of the Likens girls, and food was next to non-existent. Usually toast in the morning and a bowl of soup at night, although all the children were fed this as food and money were both hard to come by. So when the first week went by and the promised $20 failed to show up, Gertrude unleashed her anger on the two girls. They were dragged upstairs and beaten, horribly. Even after the money arrived the next day, Gertrude's hate for the Likens girls increased as she firmly believed that their father was trying to cheat her somehow. But Gertrude's rage came from something else entirely. The stress with all her children to feed, coupled with several failed marriages, put Gertrude on the edge of a psychotic break. The Likens girls were being used as an outlet to release that aggression. It didn't take long for Gertrude to focus all the abuse on just Sylvia. She would get regular beatings on her bare buttocks with a wooden board that would leave gashes into her flesh. On one occasion, Jenny Likens was able to meet with her older sister Diana, and she told her all the evil things that were happening at Gertrude's home. Diana assumed her little sister was exaggerating and that she just didn't like getting punished. Things got even worse when Paula, Gertrude's daughter, happened to get pregnant. For some deranged reason, Gertrude started calling Sylvia a whore and then proceeded to encourage all her children to take part in the torture. Paula punched Sylvia so hard that it broke her wrist. Paula went to the hospital to get a cast, but sadly that just provided her with a weapon to use on Sylvia, which she did several times. When rumors at Arsenal Tech High School, where Sylvia and Paula both attended, were being whispered that Paula and Paula's younger sister Stephanie were prostitutes, naturally Gertrude blamed Sylvia for starting those rumors and insisted that Sylvia was the prostitute. Gertrude even made mention of this to a few people in the neighborhood, that Sylvia liked to run around with the boys. As soon as Coy Hubbard, Stephanie's boyfriend, heard about these rumors from Gertrude, he was so upset that he attacked Sylvia. On several occasions, he would use Sylvia to practice his judo, flip her, throw her into walls, and choke her until she would eventually pass out. New neighbors Phyllis and Raymond Vermillion just moved in next door, and they did notice the abuse. Paula even bragged to them about how they would abuse Sylvia. Sadly, they said nothing and the torture continued. Sylvia was eventually forbidden to go to school when she confessed to Gertrude to having stolen a gym suit, as Gertrude would not purchase one for her. Gertrude pushed her children to beat on Sylvia and invited other neighborhood kids to do the same. They would starve her, put lit cigarettes out all over her body, push her down the stairs, force her to eat feces and urine, threw her in the bathtub filled with scalding hot water, and then rub salt into the burns. And on at least 2 occasions, Sylvia, while Gertrude and a crowd of children looked on, was forced to insert a Coke bottle into her vagina. Soon after the Coke bottle incident, however, Sylvia became incontinent. The repeated kicks to her groin area by Gertrude and the local children made it that much worse. After Sylvia wet the bed, Gertrude tied her up in the basement, and that's where she would stay. Sylvia and Jenny's older sister Diana decided to look into her younger sister's claims in regards to their treatment at the hands of Gertrude. She called social services to investigate, but Gertrude told the worker that Sylvia ran away. There was nothing social services could do. Unfortunately for Sylvia, the torture was about to get even worse. Gertrude, in her rage-filled mind, looked at Sylvia as the root of all her problems. Her lack of money, the lack of work, her daughter Paula getting pregnant, all because of Sylvia. And all of that misplaced and unwarranted rage was about to take form. Gertrude pinned Sylvia down and had her 10-year-old daughter Shirley heat up a needle. She then proceeded to tear into Sylvia's abdomen. One of the neighborhood kids by the name of Richard Hobbs was present for this, and when Gertrude couldn't finish due to a fit of coughing, Hobbs took over. Gertrude then took Jenny to do some groceries. When it was over, the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," were carved into her skin. Then 10-year-old Shirley and Richard Hobbs branded Sylvia with an iron poker. They were trying to burn the letter S into her skin, but it came out looking like a number 3. This is a radio excerpt of an interview with Richard Hobbs describing that situation.
She refused food. We tried to give her soup every once in a while and stuff like that, and she wouldn't take it.
Well, how about these scratch marks on her stomach? Who put them on her?
I did.
Why?
Well, Gertie just thought of it. She said, since you branded us, we're going to brand you. So she etched it in with a pen, and I went over it. She showed me how to do it, and then I went over it. I did it.
Did you ever use any hot irons on her?
No. Yeah, that 3 on her stomach, I did half of that, and Shirley Ann did the other half.
Where'd the S come from?
What do you mean?
There's a big S branded on her stomach, right over one of her breasts.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's what you're talking about. Well, how about the inscription on there, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it"? Who put that on her?
I did.
Did you scratch it on her, paint it on there? How'd you do it?
Well, like I said before, Gertie wrote it down there with a pen, and I did the rest. She showed me how to do it, and then...
Had Gertie abused this girl?
Yeah.
Later that night, while Sylvia lay on the cold basement floor tied up, she told her sister this: "I'm going to die. I can tell." The next morning, Gertrude forced Sylvia to write a letter to her parents explaining that she had run away. Gertrude's plan was to dump Sylvia's body, dead or alive, into the forest. Sylvia attempted to escape, but her injuries were so severe that Gertrude was able to catch her before leaving. Gertrude then brought her back down to the basement, where the beatings and burnings continued. With all the injuries, the abuse, and all that torture, it was just too much for Sylvia. And on October 26th, she dies from a combination of a brain hemorrhage, shock, and malnutrition. Stephanie tries to revive Sylvia, all while Gertrude could be heard saying, "She's faking it, she's faking it." The police were called, and when they showed up, Gertrude immediately handed them the letter she forced Sylvia to write. Jenny Likens suddenly ran to the police and said, "Get me out of here and I'll tell you everything." With all the evidence in Jenny's statement, Gertrude, along with her children Paula, Stephanie, and John, were arrested for murder. Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard were also arrested. At the trial, one by one, all the children involved took the stand, and one by one they told the same story. "I was just doing what I was told." When they were asked why would you do such horrific things to an innocent girl, they all had the same answer for that question as well: "I don't know." When Gertrude took the stand, the entire courtroom got to witness firsthand what kind of a mother this horrible excuse of a human being really was. She testified that she had no idea of the abuse her kids and the neighborhood children were inflicting on poor Sylvia. She claimed that she was innocent in all of this and that she had no part in any of Sylvia's torture. It was only the kids, not her. The jury, on the other hand, didn't buy Gertrude's story. In the end, Gertrude was sentenced to life in prison, but surprisingly only served 20 years. In 1985, Gertrude was paroled, changed her name to Nadine Van Fossen, and died 5 years later of lung cancer. She never once admitted to the heinous acts she did to that poor girl. Paula pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter, yet she was only incarcerated for 7 years. In March of 1972, she was paroled and walking the streets. She changed her name and vanished. She was found to be working for a school system in Iowa under the name Paula Pace. Upon the school board's discovery of who Paula Pace really was, she was fired immediately. Stephanie had all charges dropped, as she agreed to give evidence against her mother. She changed her name, and it's possible she now lives in Florida. Being the youngest inmate in the Indiana State Reformatory, John was convicted of manslaughter and served only 2 years. He changed his name to John Blake and in 2005 died of cancer. Coy Hubbard, Stephanie's boyfriend, served just 2 years. He died June of 2007. Richard Hobbs, the one responsible for slicing "I'm a prostitute and proud of it" into Sylvia's abdomen, got a short sentence as well. He dies of lung cancer at the age of 21. Now, at this moment, I'm having a difficult time deciding on how to end this video. I could go on about Gertrude and how evil she was, because that is absolutely true. But she was not the only evil person in this. To this day, I have no clue why anyone would go along with all of the sick and depraving torture that Gertrude enacted onto poor Sylvia. To say I just did what I was told is not an acceptable answer in my opinion. Evil also showed itself in other ways. Neighbors that turned a blind eye when they saw the abuse, or when they just so happened to go deaf as Sylvia screamed in pain. "It's none of my concern," they would say. "Best stay out of it." That disgusts me, and in my mind, they were just as guilty as Gertrude. Had someone said something, anything, she might have survived. Thank you for watching.